Hi, my name is Jeremy Grandstaff. I'm the facilitator for the O&M and GDMI Strategy Summit. And I'm really excited to be bringing this call to you. It took place on March 31st and gave an opportunity for 6 varying panelists to bring their perspective and their wisdom to the participants that are coming to the summit. After listening to the perspective of the panelists, participants broke into small groups and they talked about what they heard, what their reactions were, and what questions of understanding they needed to ask the panelists in order to become more wise as they think about the strategy and the action plan they're creating to advance, promote, and serve O&M and GDMI professionals. You'll get to hear the panel, and you'll get to hear the questions and answers that were provided. We hope to see you on April 22nd for meeting 3, where we dive further into the strategic and action planning pieces of the summit. A point of note, what you're seeing on your screen as you're listening to the call are 4 pictures that represent the diverse clients served by the O&M GDMI professionals. Use that as inspiration and enjoy the call. And be sure to join us on April 22nd for meeting number 3. Thanks.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dive right into this. I'm really excited to have been able to put this panel together for you guys. Outstanding group of individuals as I was preparing for this and really just looking at the backgrounds of the people that are talking with you this evening. It's really exciting to have them all in the same room. And so what we're going to do is we're first going to start with Gene. And Gene is with the Helen Keller National Center, and he'll kick off the panel. Then we'll be going to Ed Bell. Ed is from Louisiana Tech University. And to be totally honest, each of these guys are probably going to tell you a little more about themselves, which is why I'm just giving you a very general idea of who's talking with. Lucas Frank from the Seeing Eye is joining our panel this evening, as is Corey Grandstaff, who is both a consumer and a teacher at the Washington State School for the Blind. Wendy Eichler is talking with us this evening. Wendy's from Leader Dog and is filling in for Rod Ainline. So thank you, Wendy, for doing that on such short notice. And Elga Jaffe is speaking with you this evening as well. And Elga is a person that really needs no introduction in her own, but I will be turning it over to her last to wrap up your panel. Before I turn it over and ask that Gene kick us off with our panel, I want to tell you a little bit how we're approaching the panel this evening. You know, many times when we hear a panel, we're asked to judge whether the panelist is right or wrong, and this is something that really started when we were kids. It's how you were trained and educated to always ask, is someone right or wrong when they're presenting you with information? And what we found from a research perspective, and as we've worked with companies over the years, is that looking at ways to help people process what a panelist is giving them is important, and looking at ways for you to be able to say, what is it like from that panelist's point of view? What's it like living in their world and through their eyes? And so I really want you to try this evening as you listen to the panel to not ask whether they're right or wrong, but to ask, what is the additional information or the perspective or even the point of view that I can get from this panelist that will help me do a better job of knowing what our planning efforts should look like? And so I'm going to ask John that you unmute Gene, and let's go ahead and turn it over to Gene Berkwin from the Helen Keller National Center. And Gene, and for Gene and the other panelists, while John is getting Gene unmuted, just know that I will politely let you know when you have about a minute left, and then about 15 seconds so that we can stay on time. So Gene, if you'd like to talk with us, I believe you're unmuted.
I think I'm unmuted, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are. We can definitely hear you. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, a big virtual round of applause for Gene. Go ahead, Gene.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for inviting me this evening. Thanks to the steering committee. I just want to mention as I get started that I'm not feeling very well, and that after I speak, I'm probably going to put the phone on mute and listen to the rest of the panel, and then perhaps leave the meeting a little bit early because I'm just not feeling well at all. And but I'm very happy to be here and very pleased to be speaking this evening. I come from a perspective of working with deaf-blind people for 25 years. I came into the profession from another field, which was sign language interpreting, and just a little bit of exposure to travel by blind and deaf-blind people had me hooked into seeking education and then spending the last 2 decades teaching O&M to blind and deaf-blind folks. So my perspective is mainly informed by a few things. One is teaching as an adjunct at a university. Secondly, by being the intern supervisor for what I think is a large number of interns from the university training programs across the country, and also from my own travels and my own experiences training groups of O&Mers around the country. Each year I make probably half a dozen to a dozen trips around the country and conduct a week-long seminar at the Helen Keller National Center. And so from those different perspectives, I come to find concerns and my joy in practice. But I'll focus on the concerns right now. My biggest concern, which I'm sure is not unique to myself but a concern of others, is that we are not a research-based, empirically and objectively developed profession. And I really think that if we're going to have a future as a profession that is respected and is finally licensed and that has a critical scope of practice, we need to get more research-based. Our history doesn't come from that perspective. Our history comes from a perspective of best practice and from the very important and critical insights of the founders in the field. But we've had a hard time moving beyond that. And so my main message this evening is for us as we come together to find ways to be more research-based. I'll tell you a story. Recently, I went to Chicago, and I did a training with all the O&Mers from around the state who worked within the state rehab system. These guys had caseloads of 130 people. They were out there, isolated, doing their work. They had no supervision on their O&M practices. They had no contact with their colleagues. And they were hungry to get together and to hear some of the latest research and some of the latest stuff going on in the field. What I found was that these folks were really not clued in to things like the latest research in cane biomechanics and the different things we found out about cane techniques, the different research on cane equipment, topics like veering and line of travel, crossing complex intersections, and what we can do to improve the outcomes when our students cross the street. These are all topics that seem to be foreign to these practitioners. They were very good at teaching basic cane. They could teach the cane to go left and right, but there seemed to be, they had no easy mechanism to stay involved with the field. And when they had gone to school, even the recent graduates, a lot of the stuff they had to learn was not in the textbooks and not in the course materials that they were getting. So it seems to me that as a profession, we have to move to a place where we stop rewriting our textbooks again and again with the same material, but instead take the research that's out there, get it into the core materials that we teach at the universities and that we teach at conferences, and then move that research into real practical practice. This involves making sure our journals are promoting transdisciplinary science when we do our research. I've gotten a lot of pushback from the peer review process and from the editors in some of our journals when I want to include sciences from outside of O&M, and I think that's not a good way to approach what we do. What we do is very complicated. What we do involves a lot of interesting stuff that has to do with the psychology and the cognitive systems that involve vision and hearing and balance and a whole bunch of other stuff. So my message tonight really is that O&Mers and door guide schools get together, become more research-oriented, and get these things into our accrediting systems, into our re-accrediting systems, into how we gain educational credit, CEUs and stuff, and really make our profession more like those other licensed professions. It seems to me that we are behind what PTs and OTs have accomplished, that we have professions that we can model upon, and that the more we base practice on observable and objective and empirical research, the better the future. And I think we can't do that alone. I don't see...
Gene, what I would ask is, you were breaking up for just that last sentence there, the more that we do, and I would say you're almost out of time as well. So maybe you could just retouch on that really quickly, just that last piece of what you were saying, and then let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Great. I think that yoga instructors and O&Mers have to work together to push the field in this direction, and that's scientifically based. Thanks.
Yes, and I appreciate that message. Really good. And I'm sorry we were having some technical difficulties. I'm trying to figure out what's making that breaking up happen. Was only hearing it on that particular panel, but we'll move right along and see if that's a consistent theme that we can fix. So thank you, Gene. Let's move now. And John, if maybe we could move over to Lucas. I'm sorry to do that to you, Lucas, but let's go ahead and put Lucas on, unmute, and then perhaps maybe you can try to check in with Ed while we're doing this next 7 minutes with Lucas. Is that okay, John?
Yep, and Lucas is here. I'm here.
Excellent. Lucas? Fantastic. Why don't I turn it over to you, Lucas, and I'll let you know when you got a couple minutes left.
Not often that I get to go on in front of Ed. That's pretty cool. Sorry, Ed. I appreciate very much the opportunity to be on this panel. I'm honored to do it. I come at this from the perspective of someone who is a guide dog instructor and also an O&M specialist. And I would like to, the first question that we've been asked is, what does the instructor profession or this profession mean to us, and what role do we see these participants playing in this identity? I have to say that one of the wisest things that was said to me about the profession in which we all serve is that the blindness community as a whole, and those of us who are professionals within it, are a village. We are not a city. If you were to think of all the computer programmers in the world, God knows how many there are, but within our profession, and particularly within the guide dog profession, it's a group that numbers perhaps 1,000. And if we were to look at people who are professionals in the field of blindness, that may be 10,000. I don't know. And in the vast size of the world, that means that we are a village. And in a village, we all know each other. we all occasionally irritate each other, uh, but we all ultimately have to live together. And uh, living in a village is a privilege because we do have a sense of community uh, that does not exist or is very rare in many other professions. And it's a blessing and occasionally a curse. Um, One of the problems with our village is what Dean tangentially touched upon in his uh, remarks a few minutes ago when he was talking about speaking with instructors in Chicago, I believe, and saying that there were people there who had caseloads of 130. That, to me, identifies an enormous problem in our field. And it affects quality of service. It affects the amount of satisfaction we feel in our work and the effectiveness of what we do and the respect which we receive. It affects everything. And part of the problem there is the service models that we utilize. Part of the problem is funding mechanisms. Uh, and I'm sure there are other parts of the problems with which I'm not familiar. But I can tell you that the part that I am familiar with is that when in my role for the Seeing Eye, I interview applicants, it is rare to see someone nowadays who has truly very good to excellent orientation and mobility skills if they are someone who is relatively recently trained. And that's a tragedy. And it's something that myself, Rod Hainline from Leader Dog, and Chuck Ferrugia from Guide Dogs for the Blind in California several years ago began doing a roadshow about. We presented in Coma and at several other venues, in which we called ourselves the canaries in the coal mine because from a certain point of view, the dog guide programs attract people who want to be more mobile and who have a skill set. And if we're seeing problems in the quality of our applicants, then that is no doubt the tip of an iceberg. I don't know how canaries and icebergs get together to talk about mixing metaphors, but there you have it. We're seeing a dilution of the skills that we are able to teach, at least in part. There are more parts to this, but at least in part because of the caseloads people are facing in some parts of the country. Also in part because of in my view, the educational process is in trouble. And the underlying ideology of what we teach is somewhat struggling as a result. So I would have to say that is what brought me to this group, and where I have to say that as a village, we're in trouble. I would like to also address some of my misgivings about this group. And I think that based upon what happened in our small group last time, I'm not alone in this. And that is that we have one voice, which is AER, and there's concern that there's an attempt to undo the knot that ties AER to the O&M profession. And I don't believe that has to be so. When I look around the country, I've spoken at many OMAs, COMAs, SOMA, NCOMA, KOMs over the years, and those groups of O&M professionals are wonderful resources. And in a sense, I see this organization as a linking using technology and the national network of O&M instructors getting together to share and strengthen our profession, not necessarily in opposition to AER, but in addition to it, to broaden that base. And that's exactly what I hope we will be able to do, and at the same time, develop perhaps a technological framework with which to strengthen our village. And that's where I'll end it, other than saying, in terms of the model that we use to serve people, I would like to applaud Wendy Eichler and Rod Hainline from Leader Dog for their innovative work in creating a supplemental mobility model that is attempting to provide service in a very intensive way that is not being provided anywhere in any other way to people around the country. And I hope that Wendy will speak to that when she gets a chance to speak. How am I doing time-wise, Jeremy and John?
You actually came right in perfectly, Lucas. That couldn't have been better time.
Great.
Excellent. So we'll go ahead and mute Lucas, and let me just check in. John, are we ready for Ed to go next? Just one moment. We're waiting for John to get back with us, and we'll do our panel transition.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Ed?
Yep.
Fantastic.
We have battling technologies going on here.
All right. Well, we've got you on, Ed, so I'm going to give you your 7 minutes, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about you and what you'd like to share with the group tonight.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on. I am Edward Bell, and I come to this from a number of different hats. First, as a consumer, as a blind person myself, learning cane travel many moons ago. Then as a cane travel instructor, both a cane travel instructor as an agency-trained individual, and then later as a master's degree trained O&M instructor. Then after that, working in the personnel prep field in training O&M instructors, and also then in the certification process of running and helping to create and manage the National Orientation Mobility Certification. And like Lucas, throughout that capacity and throughout my years, have spent much time at various conferences, various trainings, various venues, having met a lot of the folks on this call here tonight. And my perspective is, I think, quite interesting that much of my experiences and much of my exposure, much of what I come to this from, is the perspective of the consumer, particularly the consumer who's sort of the National Federation of the Blind trained consumer, the militants, the dogmatics, the radicals, those who are always in opposition to AER, those who created the O&M program in opposition to the AER programs, those who created the Orientation Mobility Certification in opposition to the ACVREP certification. And so I absolutely come from the perspective of a history where it's been a lot of us versus them. And I think that, there's probably some people on this call who are glad that I'm here and some who have just hung up. No, but there's been a lot of disagreement over the years, a lot of we do that too, and what we do is the same. But at the end of the day, one thing I believe, and why I'm here on this call, is every one of us are in this for the same reason. Every one of us are in this because we believe in blind and visually impaired people. We want blind and visually impaired people to live independent lives, to have a chance at independence, to train people to the fullest capacity that they have, and to give them choice in how they do that. Every one of us believes that. I don't believe for a minute that there's any one of us on this call or any one of us in this profession who don't want to fulfill that mission. So we're all in this for the same reason. But as Lucas was pointing out, I think very aptly, there has been dissension across the field for many years, and right now I think we're seeing potentially quite a bit of fragmentation as well with the AER and the other things. Added to that, there are very legitimate differences. I saw in the notes where there's discussion about unifying the field and unifying the certification processes, and we've met with ACVREP and we've talked about unification and various strategies. And there are some very real differences. There are some very substantial differences, substantive differences, differences that can't be completely, swept under the rug or swept aside. And yet, given that, I think that, again, we're all in for the same purpose. So the extent to which an organization or an association can be forged that meets a common goal, whether it's to set common core philosophies that we can all agree on, or to work for legislation or policies that we can all agree on, I think that those are all good things. I don't think AER is going to go away. I don't think the NOMC special interest group is going to go away. Guide dogs have their own unique issues that are irrespective of this larger group. So I guess the only perspective that I bring, or my issues, is that I agree wholeheartedly that we all have a shared common value and a shared common belief, and the extent to which we can come to a common understanding is where I see some association. And where there are differences, and again, just being completely frank with everyone on this call, some of those differences are pretty substantive. Can we agree to disagree? Can we agree to have a common core belief, to have a common association, and still respect our mutual differences in various things? So I don't know how much more time I have left, but I'm prepared to yield the floor.
Okay, we'll actually go ahead and have you do that. One of the reasons that we'll go ahead and do that as well is because it gives us more time to really be able to dive into some of these things that you guys are talking about, and to be able to give time for question and answer. I want to move us over to Corey Grandstaff, and I'm going to have him talk. Corey, are you able to hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you just fine. Go right ahead, Corey.
So first of all, I'd like to say that I'm definitely honored to be on this panel, as I am currently, I guess, using and reading many or much of the research that, some of you that are on this call tonight are currently putting out as a student. So right now, I am a social studies teacher at the Washington School for the Blind, and currently getting my master's in to be a teacher of the visually impaired, as well as certified to be an O&M instructor. So I also was a consumer of O&M, and so that's kind of the perspective that I really come from. And part of what the O&M field kind of means to me is that it was really the tool that I was given to really become, an independent traveler, later on a dog guide user, and things like that. So O&M, was a tool to me, and so that's kind of part of the reason that I, came into this, I guess, call was to obviously, try to make that field, last and be more professionalized. Also, I guess another reason that, I believe that this group is really important is it's another opportunity that we can collaborate, as, was said by some of the other panelists. We all are a small community, and so by using this technology that we have access to and things like that, we can share some of the ideas, both from the perspective of people who have been in the field for, a good number of years, and to some people who may just be entering the field. Everyone can offer a unique perspective that, we all can use to really learn from each other. Some of the, I guess, challenges that I kind of see the O&M profession facing right now is, as a teacher, students are constantly being pulled from the classroom, and I understand the need for services, obviously, as a consumer. However, to also fully prepare students for academic successes after high school, there has to be, I guess, some different scheduling strategies developed on both ends, both the teacher's end and the orientation mobility specialists, and to try to make it so we can have students in the classroom as much as possible, as well as receiving as much O&M instruction as possible. Also, I guess that means that we need to do a little bit more of education, both to the gen ed teachers of why this service is important. I think sometimes as teachers, maybe we don't understand what O&M really is. As a consumer, obviously, I understand, but some of my colleagues may not. And so to do that additional training, not only to the teacher, but for the principal, the person who kind of hires those services, are really important, can actually lead to the field being more respected.
Where you've got about a minute and a half left.
Okay. So I guess some of the ideas that, or the last question here where it talks about what would I ideally want to see in the field, I guess more different strategies developed to, more creative scheduling, I guess, and a stronger language somewhere where we need to, so O&M specialists are the only ones providing services and not necessarily any other person because of the uniqueness of the service that we are providing. That's all.
All right. Well, excellent. Thank you very much, Corey. And again, we will have opportunity for question and answer at the end. I want to go ahead and jump over to Wendy. Wendy, thanks so much. You've been very patient tonight. Let's go ahead and give Wendy the floor. Wendy, can you check in for me?
Can everybody hear me, I hope?
Yep, we can hear you just
good.
great. Thanks.
Okay. First of all, I'm both grateful and terrified to be part of this panel stepping in for Rod. I want to be clear that we didn't actually sit down and talk about the questions because I have not seen him this week. So I'm going to give you my perspective and some of the things that I've seen over the last 14 years at Leader Dogs. I guess let me start with guide dogs, mobility instructors. Historically, in my experience, have lived on islands, so I look at this as an opportunity for instructors to come together. Having been to many seminars for AER, Tacoma, Michigan, Tacoma, every orientation mobility instructor I've ever spoken with, it seems to be the passion is to serve the client, serve the student, and I have yet to meet somebody who's not looking to learn. So I look at this group as an opportunity to network, to grow, to learn. I love what I'm hearing about the possibilities of research. I want to echo Lucas in the skills in O&M that we're seeing and the innovation that has happened at Leader Dogs to create an accelerated mobility program, again, to help meet the mobility needs and the orientation needs of the clients out there as an additional service. I like networking. I like getting together. The last call was very interesting, a nice mix of O&M and GDMI. I forget who just said that we all have our own concerns and issues, but I think this is a real opportunity to grow as professions together. I'm hoping for a chance for GDMI to have professional groups and to grow and to continue to work together. I'm not sure how much more I personally have to say. It's a lot. Let me go to the last one. That's okay. Let me go to the last question. What are hopes and dreams for the professional and GDMI community? I hope that the communities can work together. I hope that we continue to ask each other how we can improve, how we can help each other, and I hope that we can continue to ask our clients what they see as a need in their training, both with Guide Dogs and with teamwork.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you very much again to Wendy. And John, we're going to be moving over to Elga now. So Elga, we would love to have you round out the panelists today. Elga, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. So Elga, why don't you go ahead and wrap up the panel for us, and then we'll get people talking about it and asking questions.
Okay, wow, that's a little bit daunting, and a couple of very dignified and well thought out presentations to follow. Just by way of quick introduction, for the many things that I've done in the profession of O&M, from working on public policy and advocacy to research to direct service to quasi-administration of O&M services. I'm now a retired lady and stayed retired for long enough to pick up my retirement papers and then began providing direct services again to youngsters in North Carolina, where my family just moved in November from New York. So that's by way of a little bit of background. And I come to this panel and follow what everybody's saying, almost wanting to disregard what I put together, because really after 42 years as an O&M professional and all of the different perspectives or engagements that I've had with the profession, what pains me most is not the wonky stuff that I've listed as challenges and trends, etc., but the fact that what Lucas spoke about and what Dr. Bell spoke about, we're a community. We all are passionate about providing quality service, follow up on Jean, how we can improve the quality of service through research and be research-based. And what pains me the most is to see an idea like the one we are presenting, where we are broadening our base and broadening what we can do in this very challenging and changing environment we live in, to see each other engaging in our energy in strife over who has the right to do this and who should be studying this and who shouldn't be studying it. As stakeholders in O&M, it's everybody's responsibility and everybody's right to put on the table what we see and know and need. So I'm pained very much by the strife, by some of the emails that I've read on the list about who should or should not be talking about this. This belongs to all of us. We are a community. We're a small village. And with that, I will go back to the wonky remarks that I had prepared. Pretty much I've reviewed what I think the profession means to me, which is the full complement of direct services, service delivery options, continuing ed, personnel prep, research, credentialing, quality assurance, and accountability in O&M, and I'm sure a reviewer could go put in some more. But the purpose is so that people who are blind and visually impaired acquire the skills to move safely and with purpose. And that's what I see as the reason for all of this. And I think that if we succeed as a group, we will be able to define, present, and advance the profession of O&M parentheses without killing each other in the process, so it is readily recognized and accepted not only within our own service delivery field, but by the larger service delivery networks of healthcare, rehabilitation, and education. I was struck in our small groups by the number of people who said, well, I thought I could get a job right away. There's such a lot of need, but I could be a contractor, but unless I had a TVI or unless I moved to another place, I couldn't get employed. So what are the current trends and these challenges that I think are contributing to that? The first trend I see is the expansion of health care coverage and Medicaid options under the Affordable Care Act. And the second trend that I see is cost shifting and cost cutting in existing O&M service delivery systems. The challenges are that O&M can't be included in any of the services right now under the Affordable Care Act because there's no mechanism for including our present credential, COMS or NOMC, because they're not recognized by state credentialing authorities. I really think that in identifying ourselves and advancing our profession, it has to be done in a way that it's readily and recognized and accepted by people who need our services, whether they enter through education, whether they enter through voc rehab, whether they enter through the healthcare system. And the cost shifting and the cost cutting is happening in that school systems are starting to cost shift what IDEA requires. In some states, the shift is to health departments for early intervention in preschool, and bingo, O&M can't provide these services even though they're mentioned in IDEA because healthcare systems can't contract with people who don't have credentials that are either issued or recognized by a state. States can adopt our existing credentialing by reference. But through these systems that education is being cost shifted to, we may not be able to do what we so passionately all want to do. The cost cutting in rehab leaves people with caseloads like what Lucas has described and no back door in through any door, whether it's health care or more rehab funding. And I think that the important thing is for us to present ourselves and present ourselves passionately in a united and strong way so that people understand that this is what we do, there's a good reason for it, and we should be part of the systems that fund this.
Excellent. Helga, you have about 1 minute left.
Okay. My wrap-up is that mobility people are feeling and perceiving many serious and probably confusing needs that directly relate to and challenge their ability to provide services and earn a living. And these challenges transcend our history, they're just transcendent. And to rise to these challenges, we need to be laser focused on solutions, and we really need to leave behind the us versus them that has been like, internal strife within our family and village, and pull together to face the challenges that lie ahead.
At
John,
this point, the group divided into small groups of 4 and discussed what they heard the panelists say, what their reactions were, and what questions they had for the
Chris,
panelists. We return to the question and answer portion.
It is, and I hope that I can represent them appropriately. And the question that Group 2 had is presented to all the presenters, so that hopefully we can hear each of them respond if that's possible. A lot of the discussion revolved around what seems to be challenges within our field as far as what our current providers are having, whether they're just coming out of school or skills that they didn't get from their original training, and what the presenters feel would be a good way for a professional organization to communicate to personnel preparation programs in all the different fields, whether they be comms or NOMC, what we feel is happening from the field so that we can try to have a clear and open communication about what's working, what may need to be revamped. We talked a little bit about distance education or traditional programs. Obviously, there's a need to get as many new professionals into the field as possible, but we would certainly want to retain the integrity of the instruction that happens so that when new professionals arrive in the field, they have the skills that are requisite to provide adequate instruction.
So, Chris, your group is not targeting a particular person. Is that correct?
We're hoping to get a little bit of feedback from everyone because different panelists had different representations. We have Dr. Bell, who is obviously focused on personal.
Chris,
yes.
I'm only cutting you off because we're running out of time.
You go right ahead and cut me off. I understand. It's okay.
That's okay. So I'm going to actually pitch this over. I think what I'm going to ask is Lucas and Ed to take a stab at it. That sounds
perfect. If Dr. Bell and Lucas could do that, that would be terrific.
Okay. So, Lucas,
Ed, you went first last time.
Yeah. So let's jump over to Lucas first, and then we'll come to Ed, and then we'll move to our next question. So, Lucas?
Thanks, Ed. I'm sorry I cut you off again. Chris, I think you put the finger on it, and the answers, I don't have answers. I wish I did. I think that's something that has to come out of our community and some brainstorming sessions that will get a little deeper into it. In terms of ideas, I certainly am concerned. I believe that the attempt to address the personnel shortages which we face through distance education is a wise move, but and a necessary one because of the numbers involved. At the same time, and I'll be a little bit blunt here, I think there is a difference in terms of the quality of the personnel prep among the universities in distance ed and also between distance ed programs and on-campus programs, just in terms of intensity. Now, how do you make up the balance there? I don't know. Maybe you do it through longer internships, which, maybe, and that, of course, takes the benefit of distance ed away because you're right back into longer-term training. But we cannot afford to dilute our skills, I don't think.
So, Ed, what else would you add to that? Oh, I'm not sure we have Ed off mute. Just one moment. Okay, I'm having trouble. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go.
I would say just a couple of things to that. One thing, and this is not going to be received very well by some of the folks on this call, but unfortunately, and as we were saying in our small group, I am not opposed to licensure, and I think that there's an avenue for licensure and there's a method for it. But each one of these methods whereby we define and restrict our professionalism also has the unintended consequence of limiting the number of people who are available to do the work that needs to be done. So, as Lucas said, I think that we absolutely need to find more ways of providing internships, apprenticeships, different ways of providing training. And in fact, I agree wholeheartedly that the rigor and the standards cannot be compromised. But I think we need to find more creative ways of doing that, including paraprofessional apprenticeship. These OTs and PTs that are coming in and providing training without having the background, they shouldn't be doing that. But rather than sort of drawing the line in the sand, maybe we need to find ways of training them so they can do the instruction rather than limiting who can and who can't do it. I mean, we've got to find more creative ways of training people rather than limiting who can and can't provide.
Well, two good answers. Let's move to our next question, unless, John, you're seeing any other hands raised by panelists. All right. We'll move to our next question, and thank you, Chris, for the question. Remember, to my people who are asking the questions for the groups, make sure that you email the outputs from your discussion of those three questions into ondm.ta@gmail.com so that we can get those addressed as well. John, who's our question coming from next? John, who's our next question coming from? Sorry, folks, we're having some technical difficulties. Just one moment.
Our question from Anna Williams.
Excellent. Thank you. Anna, we've got you on. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. This message is for Wendy Eichler. And our group had a question. This is actually in reference to Lucas Frank and Wendy. We were wondering if you could expand on, you were talking about your orientation and mobility program and accelerated mobility program that Leader Dogs currently has, and some kind of collaboration or project that you had going on. If you could just expand on that, please.
Excellent. Thanks for the question, Anna. And Wendy, why don't you take that first?
I can. We offer at Leader Dog a one-week accelerated program that covers basic O&M. The original idea was to assist the clients that wanted to apply for a Leader Dog but didn't quite have the O&M skills necessary to be successful. And in the interest of success, we created a one-week accelerated program. It has expanded larger than I think we originally envisioned. It services both clients who are interested in dogs and clients who just want additional O&M training as another avenue of training. We currently have 3 O&M comms on staff as well as, no, 4, I'm sorry, there's 4 comms on staff, and as well as an internship program that we developed last year where we will be bringing 3 interns a year in for, I think it's 3 months, to expand their training, and they train in the one-week program as part of that internship.
Excellent. Anyone else on the panel, John, have anything to add to this one? If not,
the person who asked the question also asked that Lucas reply. So, Lucas, if you do have a reply.
No, we've been talking amongst ourselves that, in the green room with the martinis. So you'll have to forgive me, but the model that Leader Dog has developed there is also to some extent with variations being used in England, and actually for dog guide work. And the advantage of it is that with a one-week intensive, it moves the ball along a greater distance in a shorter period of time than itinerant services. And I think that this is a model of quick service that doesn't reach a very high level, but gives people hope and a minimum skill set that should be experimented with and explored around the country. In addition to the 2 models of inpatient rehab sort of services and itinerant.
Excellent. Thanks, Lucas. John, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. And as John's looking for that next question, remember, folks, those of you who are writing the information down from the questions that you've talked about in your small groups, please email that to oandm.pa@gmail.com. John, who's our next question coming from?
Our next question is coming from Beth Sutton. Beth Sutton, go ahead.
Hey, Beth,
Hi,
good to hear your voice.
Oh, who said that?
Jeremy did.
Oh, hi, Jeremy. Okay, so my group wanted to ask the panel and anybody who feels like addressing this, how will we address the lack of funding and systemic issues it creates? For example, cost-cutting, caseload expansion, and how it deteriorates quality of service. Would licensure and access to insurance billing address these issues? What can we do to move insurance billing forward? Thank you.
Not a problem, Beth, and their group is not directing it to one particular person. I'm going to actually see if I can
It looks like Edward Bell raised his hand.
Yes, that sounds great. That's who I was going to go to anyway. So let's start with Ed, and then if any of the other panelists want to jump in, hit the 3 on your phone so we know. Go ahead, Ed.
So let me just put this very plainly and very succinctly. Licensure does nothing on a professional level greater than certification does. It provides no greater assurance than any type of certification does. It can, as you alluded to, open the doors toward medical billing. To that extent, I'm all for it. And to that extent, as you may know, the NOMC folks, the NFB folks have been the single biggest opponents to the licensure bill and have been the reason why it hasn't been passed for so many years. It could be passed tomorrow. If licensure is simply based on the professional certifications of COMS and NOMC, it can be passed tomorrow. But I think that you have some political issues where folks want to control within each state what those credentials, can, should, and should not look like. And you have politics getting involved here that are defeating this process. If we make licensure simply based on the professional certifications that have been in existence for a very long time now, this licensure issue can be resolved tomorrow.
Excellent. Thanks, Ed. Any other panelists want to weigh in on this?
Yep, Elga
Okay.
does. Give me just a second.
No problem.
Hi, Elga.
Hi. Ed, I'm really glad to hear you say that because we have been working, as you know, very hard in New York State, where I no longer live, but I still work through distance education on faculty at Hunter College to get licensure passed. And we found that sitting with everybody is what got us to the point where we are at least able to speak as a common voice. The question from the panelist, to the panel, was what assurances are there that this would increase, employment opportunities and funding in the profession? We don't know. We only know that when IDEA listed O&M as an example of a related service, when it always could have been provided as a related service, as soon as the name got listed on an official government list, school districts started paying attention, and school districts that didn't really provide O&M, or maybe sort of did only when a parent asked, suddenly said, ooh, look at O&M, it's on a list, we have to start providing it. So I think that getting us together so that we are working toward a common goal and getting our credentialing system recognized state by state for what's right in that state is going to put this profession on the radar. There will be referral patterns. It will take time to evolve. It won't happen right away. But it will put us into systems where there are funding, and we'll have to be savvy. We'll have to be sure that we learn the healthcare system. If we get into it, we get the expertise and the right consultants, so we get good diagnostic treatment codes and reimbursement rates that support us continuing to provide quality services. It's taken OT and PT a long time to get Medicare to allow them to provide the services the way they'd like. Physicians are always fighting for it, but we will be in a system that gives us another access to another funding stream.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. We've got to keep moving through our questions. Let's go to the next question. John, who's that coming from?
Next question's coming from Richard Long. Hi, Richard.
Excellent. Richard, so glad to have you and your group participating tonight. Who's your question for, and what is the question?
Our group would like to address this to Elga. There was a considerable amount of discussion on the call about building community among O&M providers. As Lucas mentioned, we're a relatively small village. We work in disparate settings. We have splintered funding sources and a great need for more services across the age span. So we're interested, Elga, in your thoughts about how to increase professionalism and a sense of community among the O&M world providers.
Olga, let's bounce it over to you. Thank you, Richard. Go ahead, Olga.
I got to go look for my magic wand. Just a minute. I think that O&M has a long history of being so passionate that we lose sight of the forest through the trees. I remember when I got started and I got a master's degree in O&M, somebody mentioned having a bachelor's degree in O&M, and oh my God, we would have thought that our services, our quality of services, our reach of services were coming to an end. Well, nothing of the sort happened. I think one of the things that really I would like to see is that we need to focus on what our common grounds are and come to a common goal and not realize, and not always it's us against them. Those who for the bachelor's degree programs, those who were against the bachelor's degree program, rather than look at what are we trying to accomplish, what's a good way to get there. And as Ed said, he doesn't think there's anybody on this call that would say that we don't all want to achieve the same thing. And rather than making this a win and lose situation, I got my way, he didn't get his way, we have to look at what the problem is, look at what our strengths, our weaknesses, our threats, our opportunities, our resources are, and bring them to bear together without regard for whose idea this was or who has a right to solve this problem, and just put it all out there and let's get to work. We have too many people that need what we have to offer, and we have too much sand in the gears that gets in the way of us training more personnel, getting people employed, getting services to where they need to be, etc.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Olga. I'm going to take one more question and ask that participants bear with us. I'm just going to run about 5 minutes over, but I do want to take one more question. I also want to remind people that are recording or taking notes for your group, you want to make sure you're sending us the answers to all the questions. So what were the reactions? What did you hear? What were the reactions to what you heard? And what questions of understanding do you have? Let's move to our last question of the evening, and then I'm going to wrap this up and talk about how we're going to go about getting some of the questions that we weren't able to get answered tonight addressed. John, who's our next question?
Michael Byington.
Oh, Michael, yeah. I'm so glad that you're on the call. Fantastic. Michael, what's your question and for who? Michael?
Michael, it looks like your phone's on mute. If you give it *6. There you go.
Am I unmuted? Oh, *6? Let's see here.
No, you're good, Michael. You're good. We got you. We can hear you now.
The question is based on something Lucas said, so I assume he'd be the primary respondent. And it is, he made some comments about an observation that generally the competencies in O&M that they're seeing coming into the dog guide schools appear to be depreciating somewhat, and their breadth of applicants just aren't as competent of travelers as they used to be. The question becomes, with the exponential expansion of multiply disabled blind people among the blindness population and the COMS and NOMC fields, etc., being expected to serve those individuals, what are the steps or methodologies for addressing both ends of the spectrum and appropriately broadening the field so that we are becoming experts in multiply disabled blind and at the same time not dumbing down the field but assuring high quality at that top end as well?
So I do want to start with you, Lucas, on this, and we haven't actually had Corey weigh in on one of those. And so, Corey, if this is a question that you feel you might be able to weigh in on just from some of the experience you've had as a teacher, teaching to that, I just am putting you on notice. I'd like to check in with you next. Lucas, why don't you kick us off with an answer?
You know, Michael, hello. the dog guide programs as a whole again, because of the changing in demographics, the dog guide programs are dealing with more and more people with multiple disabilities, but it's not where we spend most of our efforts. And by and large, in this country, and I emphasize that because different countries have different models, almost all of the programs in this country serve a national constituency. That is to say that someone from California might apply to a school in New Jersey or vice versa. And that means that we are constricted to the 1-month service model that most dog guide programs have. Some of the Californian schools are modifying that, and even reducing it further. And that means that the amount of time is limited and structured in such a way that although some people might benefit from dog guide services with multiple disabilities, the additional training time is just not there in our models. Now, within the O&M field, again, that type of, in my view, again, it's a question of time. You need time to be able to help people learn the skills that they need to learn and figure out ways, improvised or structured, to help them deal with their additional disabilities. And in most training models around the country, let me rephrase that. In many training models around the country, that time just isn't there. In some places, there is. My personal observation is that there are pockets of excellence around the country, and I have the benefit in my job of traveling around the country and seeing that. And I didn't mean to say that or imply in any way in my remarks that O&M is in disastrous shape. In some places it is. In other places there is true excellence. And I think we need to look at the models in the places where there is excellence and figure out how they're doing what they're doing. And a lot of it's frankly money. And see if we can get that to happen other places.
Excellent. Corey, I ask you if you have any thoughts on this, because I know you and I have talked about this being a struggle for you as a teacher coming in at times as well. Anything that you would want to share with the group, just wrapping up, kind of helping us wrapping up in 60 seconds or less?
Am I on?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess the thing that I would have to say is I ask myself the same question every day. How do I make sure that I'm meeting the needs of my college-bound students, and by the way, I specifically can't speak to the O&M profession, but from the teacher's perspective, how do I meet the needs of my college-bound students while also meeting the needs of my students who, frankly, are going to most likely end up in sheltered workshop? And so it's all about, I haven't found a solution yet, but I think Lucas did make a great point that it really is about time, and we're running the same problem in the classroom, is there's just not enough time to give the multiply disabled students the individualized instruction that they need. And then you also have the issue of there's not enough teacher resources. You know, when I have 15, 20, 30 kids in a classroom, you know, there's no way that I can work with my 10 multiply disabled kids and also be able to work with the other 20 students who may be going on to you know, higher education. So it's still a problem that we're trying to figure out in the classroom as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey. And you know what? We have one more group left, and I want to give them the opportunity to ask their question. Thanks for bearing with us as we run over just a tad here. I know it's late for everybody, but John, who's that last question coming from?
You know what? It looked like the last question is from Jessica, but it's a 4. So I'm going to bring her in and see if it is a question, and we'll go from there. Hey, Jessica, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, Jessica, we can hear you just fine. Were you wanting to ask a question for the panel?
I was indeed. My group asked, the question was for Elga, and they wanted to know, and it's kind of been answered, but how do we come together to create this professional credibility, and what does Elga see as the gaps that are preventing this credibility from being our professions being completely recognized.
Elga, why don't you give us a 2-minute last words of wisdom here on this particular question, and then I'm going to wrap it up for the evening.
I will actually draw my answer from what Nancy Miller has been putting out in New York State, and that is that a profession is recognized, one, when they find you on the list, and two, when you are in the circle or network of referral patterns. And doctors don't refer to O&M people, physicians, I mean, because they don't see us on the list of providers they can refer to. And so when a parent is in a physician's office with a baby identified as visually impaired, the doctor looks down a list. Who can I refer this child to? Unless there's a presence of a large agency serving visually impaired people in the community, OT or PT is the one they contact. I think we need to get out there. We need to have our names and our certifications on the list, so to speak, and we need to be part of the referral pattern. And I think what Jean said was also very important. We need to be practice-based. Our practice needs to be research-based. It needs to be up-to-date, and we need to act and function like professions that are within the streams of funding. And the gravy train, I suppose, has stopped riding past O&M's doorstep, and we need to be part of the mainstream. And I think part of it is with having our credentials recognized by state credentialing groups that stand behind how services are paid for.
Excellent. And with that, we're going to go ahead and begin wrapping up tonight's call. I know we kept you a little bit past the 10:30 Eastern time, and I really appreciate you sticking with us. A big virtual applause for our 6 panelists this evening. You guys were all fantastic. A reminder that our next meeting where we're going to pick this stuff back up is on Tuesday, April 22nd. It is not on April 15th, but instead is on April 22nd, so that we can be respectful of all people and make sure that they can get to participate by taking into account the Jewish holiday of Passover. A couple things that we've seen tonight, just a quick reminder for those of you who were taking notes in your group, email us the answers to all the questions by emailing that to oandm.pa@gmail.com. I've gotten a couple so far, and I would appreciate you sending those in. We will be doing a recap of this meeting, and we'll get it out by Friday of this week.
This concluded the conference call for the evening.